The notification chimed on my phone at 11:47 p.m. while I was elbow deep in the engine of a 2018 Honda Civic. The garage was quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of late-night traffic on Highway 9. I wiped my greasy hands on my coveralls and glanced at the screen. Tonight's our night, babe. He's clueless as always. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. The message was meant for my wife, Tessa, but it came to my phone instead. Wrong number, right revelation. I stared at those words for a solid 30 seconds, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise, exactly. More like confirmation of what I'd suspected for months. The late nights at the office, the sudden interest in yoga classes, the way she'd started keeping her phone face down during dinner. My name is Miles Harren, and I own Precision Auto Works in the suburbs outside Denver. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy with honest work. At 34, I've got calloused hands, a decent reputation, and until tonight, I thought I had a marriage worth saving. The Honda's engine ticked as it cooled. I set down my wrench and really looked at that text message. The sender was listed as N in Tessa's contacts. I'd seen that initial pop-up before on her phone, always dismissed as work stuff. Nolan something or other from her corporate crowd. Well, I muttered to the empty garage. Looks like my data analyst wife forgot to analyze which phone number she gave her boyfriend. I could have called her right then, could have driven home and confronted them both. Instead, I did what any good mechanic does when faced with a problem. I started gathering information. My phone buzzed again. Another message from N. Did you tell him you're working late again? This hotel room is getting expensive, but you're worth every penny. Then another. Bring that red thing you wore last week. Drives me crazy. I screenshotted each message. If Tessa wanted to play games, I'd make sure I knew all the rules first. The drive home took 20 minutes through quiet suburban streets, lined with maple trees and two-story colonials. Our house sat on Elmwood Drive, a perfectly manicured street where everyone knew everyone else's business. Mrs. Vexley from next door was probably watching from behind her curtains even at this hour. That woman could spot drama from 3 blocks away. Tessa's BMW wasn't in the driveway, working late again apparently. I parked my truck and sat there for a moment, engine ticking in the silence. The house looked normal from the outside, porch light on, newspapers stacked neatly by the door, flower beds Tessa insisted on maintaining for the neighbors' approval. Everything exactly as it should be, except for the fact that my wife was in some hotel room with a guy named N. Inside, the house felt different. Not physically changed, but somehow hollow. I walked through rooms we'd furnished together, past photos of our wedding day and vacation trips, seeing it all through new eyes. How long had she been lying to my face while sitting at our kitchen table? How many times had she kissed me goodbye before meeting another man? I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat down at my laptop. If Tessa thought I was clueless, she was about to learn otherwise. Years of running a business had taught me the value of thorough research before making any major decisions. First stop, our joint bank accounts. 3 withdrawals in the past month at ATMs near downtown hotels. Always on nights when Tessa claimed to be working late. The amounts were small enough to avoid notice, but consistent enough to establish a pattern. Next, I checked our shared calendar. Tessa's client meetings lined up perfectly with the mysterious text messages I'd been noticing. She'd been planning this affair right under my nose, using our own organizational system. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My phone buzzed with another misdirected message. Can't focus on anything but you. This presentation tomorrow is going to be terrible, because all I can think about is tonight. I almost laughed. Here I was, discovering my wife's affair through her own carelessness, while she worried about work presentations. The irony was thick enough to cut with a wrench. By 1 a.m., I had a pretty clear picture. Nolan Vero, age 35, worked at Pinnacle Financial downtown. Divorced last year, drives a silver BMW, belongs to the same gym as Tessa. His social media showed exactly the kind of guy I'd expected. Perfectly styled hair, expensive watches, photos from trendy restaurants with captions about living my best life. The front door opened at 1:23 a.m. I closed the laptop and pretended to be reading a magazine when Tessa walked in, looking slightly disheveled but trying to appear normal. "Hey, honey," she said, kicking off her heels. "Sorry I'm so late. The Henderson account is being a nightmare." "No problem," I replied, not looking up from my magazine. "How was your evening?" "Exhausting. You know how these client meetings go." She headed toward the stairs, then paused. "I'm going to shower and go straight to bed. Big day tomorrow." "Sure thing. Sleep well." I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of the shower starting, and thought about how easily the lies came to her now. 3 years of marriage, and she could look me in the eye and fabricate entire evenings without missing a beat. But I had advantages she didn't know about. My best friend Felix runs a security consulting firm downtown. We'd grown up together, served in the army together, and he owed me more favors than either of us could count. If I needed technical help gathering evidence, Felix was my guy. More importantly, Tessa had always underestimated me. To her, I was just the grease monkey she'd married when she thought blue-collar guys were charming. Now that she'd climbed the corporate ladder, I was probably an embarrassment. A clueless husband who worked with his hands while she worked with her brain. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, Tessa left for work with her usual kiss on the cheek and reminder about dinner plans with her sister. I waited until her BMW disappeared around the corner, then called Felix. "Miles, what's up?" His voice carried that alert quality it always had, like he was ready for anything. "Need a favor. Can you meet me at the shop around 10? "Sure. This about that security system you wanted installed?" "Something like that." Felix Roard had been running digital security for corporate clients since leaving the military. He was the kind of guy who could find information that didn't want to be found, and he'd never asked too many questions about my requests. When he arrived at Precision Auto Works, I showed him the misdirected text messages. "Ouch," he said, scrolling through the screenshots. "How long has this been going on?" "Based on bank records and calendar entries, at least 3 months, maybe longer." Felix studied the messages with professional interest. "You want me to dig deeper?" "I want to know everything. Where they meet, how often, what they're planning. If Tessa thinks she can make a fool of me while planning her exit strategy, she's got another thing coming. Give me 48 hours. While Felix worked his magic, I focused on my own preparations. The first step was securing our joint assets. As a business owner, I'd learned to be careful with money, and most of our accounts required both signatures for major transactions. But there were ways around that if you knew what you were doing. I started by documenting everything. Photos of our house, cars, bank statements, credit card bills. If this marriage was heading for divorce court, I wanted a clear picture of what we'd built together and what Tessa might try to claim as her own. The second step was talking to Dean Calix, my business partner and mentor. Dean had been running auto shops for 30 years and had seen every kind of personal drama play out among his employees and friends. When I explained the situation, he just nodded grimly. "Saw this coming 6 months ago," he said, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Way she started talking about you at the Christmas party, like you were some kind of project she'd outgrown." "What do you mean?" "Kept mentioning how she was evolving and discovering herself. Usually means someone's discovered someone else." Dean's observation stung because it rang true. Tessa had been using phrases like that lately, talking about personal growth and expanding horizons. I'd thought she was just getting more confident at work. "What's your plan?" Dean asked. "Depends on what Felix finds. But if she wants out of this marriage, she's going to do it honestly. No more lies, no more sneaking around. And if she doesn't want to be honest? I picked up a socket wrench and tested its weight in my hand. Then I'll make honesty her best option. Felix called that afternoon with preliminary results. Your wife's boyfriend is a real piece of work. Nolan Varro divorced 8 months ago because his ex-wife caught him cheating, filed for bankruptcy last year, but somehow still drives a $60,000 car. And get this, he's been posting photos with Tessa on his private Instagram account. Private account? Yeah, but privacy settings don't mean much if you know what you're doing. Want me to send you the photos? Send everything. The photos arrived an hour later, and they made everything real in a way the text messages hadn't. Tessa and Nolan at restaurants I'd never been to, holding hands across candle-lit tables. Tessa wearing dresses I'd never seen, smiling in ways that looked nothing like the tired expressions she'd been giving me at home. One photo was taken at the Riverside Hotel downtown, dated just 3 days ago. Tessa had told me she was working late on the Henderson account that night. But the worst part wasn't the lies or the cheating. It was seeing how happy she looked. In every photo, Tessa appeared more alive and engaged than she'd been with me in months. Whatever she was getting from Nolan, it was something she'd stopped finding in our marriage. That realization should have made me sad. Instead, it made me angry. I drove home that evening with a plan forming in my mind. Tessa was in the kitchen when I arrived, still in her work clothes, chopping vegetables for dinner. Hey, honey, how was your day? Interesting, I said, setting my keys on the counter. Got a weird text message last night. Meant for you, I think. She looked up from the cutting board, and I caught a flicker of panic in her eyes before she recovered. Oh? What kind of text? I pulled out my phone and read the message aloud. Tonight's our night, babe. He's clueless as always. The knife slipped in Tessa's hand, and she quickly set it down. I have no idea what that's about. Probably some spam thing. Came from someone named N in your contacts. N? She frowned, as if trying to remember. Oh, that's probably Nancy from accounting. She's always sending group messages about office parties and stuff. You know how autocorrect can be. The lie came so smoothly that I almost admired her skill. If I hadn't seen the photos Felix sent, I might have believed her. Nancy from accounting wants to feel your hands on her? Tessa's face went pale. What? I read the second message. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. Miles, I swear I don't know what that's about. Someone must be playing a prank or… Cut the act, Tessa. My voice came out colder than I'd intended. I know about Nolan. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched her calculating. Deny everything? Confess and apologize? Attack me for snooping? I could practically see the wheels turning. Finally, she chose option 3. You went through my phone? You violated my privacy? Your boyfriend sent the messages to my phone by mistake. Hard to violate your privacy when you're broadcasting your affair to the wrong number. He's not my boyfriend. Nolan and I are just friends. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos Felix had sent. Tessa and Nolan kissing outside the Riverside Hotel. Friendly kiss. Tessa looked at the photo, then at me, and something shifted in her expression. The panic disappeared, replaced by something colder. Fine. Yes. I've been seeing Nolan. And you know what? I'm not sorry. Really? Really? This marriage has been over for months, Miles. We both know it. I've just been too polite to say anything. Too polite? That's what you call lying to my face every night? She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. I call it trying to figure out what I want without hurting you unnecessarily. But since you've been spying on me, I guess we're past that point. What you want is to cheat on your husband while living in his house and spending his money. Our house, our money. And I want freedom, Miles. I want to be able to see other people without having to sneak around like a teenager. I stared at her. You want an open marriage? I want honesty. I want to be able to go out with Nolan when I feel like it, without having to make up stories about working late. And what do I get out of this arrangement? She shrugged. The same freedom if you want it. Or you can stay home and work on cars. Whatever makes you happy. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She wanted to keep all the benefits of marriage, the house, the financial security, the social status, while treating me like a roommate she occasionally had to check in with. That's very generous of you, I said. I thought you'd see it that way. You're a reasonable person, Miles. We can make this work. I nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. We can make this work. Relief flooded her face. Really? You're okay with this? I'm more than okay with it. In fact, I think you should start your new life right away. What do you mean? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Lease agreement for a nice apartment downtown. 2 bedrooms, great view, close to Nolan's place. You can move in this weekend. Tessa opened the envelope and scanned the documents. Miles, I don't understand. Why would I move out? Because if you want freedom, you should be free. Free to see whoever you want, whenever you want, without worrying about your husband's feelings. But this is my house too. We bought it together. Actually, we didn't. The deed is in my name only. Wedding gift from my parents, remember? You wanted it that way for tax purposes. She stared at the lease agreement, and I watched understanding dawn on her face. You're kicking me out? I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Freedom. Tessa didn't take the news well. She spent the next hour alternating between tears, threats, and attempts at negotiation. But the legal facts were clear. The house was mine. Most of our assets were in accounts that required my signature, and her name wasn't on the business that generated our income. This is insane, she said, pacing around the living room. You can't just throw me out because you're jealous. I'm not throwing you out. I'm respecting your choice. You want to be with Nolan? Go be with Nolan. What about our marriage? What about working things out? You already worked things out, with him, for 3 months. She tried a different approach. Miles, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I'll end things with Nolan. We can go to counseling. You had 3 months to think about our marriage while you were in hotel rooms with another man. I'm sure you gave it all the consideration it deserved. You're being vindictive. I'm being practical. You want freedom? Take it. But you don't get to have freedom and security at the same time. By Friday, Tessa had moved into the downtown apartment. She took her clothes, her personal items, and the BMW that was in her name. Everything else stayed with the house. I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. The following Monday, I was under the hood of a Chevy Silverado when Dean called me into his office. Got a problem, he said, closing the door behind me. Woman came by this morning asking questions about you. What kind of questions? Professional stuff. How long you've worked here, whether you've ever had problems with anger, if you've been acting strange lately. Let me guess. Blonde, about 5'6", drives a BMW? Nope. Brunette, maybe 40, drove a Honda. Said she was from some kind of advocacy group for domestic abuse victims. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Tessa sent someone to investigate me? That's what I figured. Told the lady you've been nothing but professional for the 8 years I've known you. But Miles, if your ex-wife is building some kind of case against you, she's not my ex-wife yet. And what kind of case could she build? I haven't touched her. Doesn't matter if you touched her. Matters what she can make people believe you might do. Dean was right. If Tessa was trying to paint me as abusive or dangerous, it could destroy my business and my reputation. Worse, it could give her leverage in divorce proceedings. I called Felix that afternoon. Need another favor. Bigger this time. What's going on? I explained about the investigator and Tessa's apparent strategy. Felix listened without interruption, then sighed. She's playing hardball. You sure you want to escalate this? She escalated it when she sent someone to my workplace to dig up dirt on me. Fair enough. What do you need? Everything you can find on Nolan Vero, financial records, employment history, criminal background, social media activity. If he's got skeletons, I want to know where they're buried. And Tessa? Her too. If she wants to play investigator, let's see how she likes being investigated. Felix's report arrived 2 days later, and it was even better than I'd hoped. Nolan Vero had a history of financial problems dating back years. The bankruptcy filing was just the latest in a series of bad decisions that included defaulted student loans, unpaid credit cards, and a tax lien from the IRS. More interesting was his employment record. Nolan had been fired from his previous job at Morrison Financial for inappropriate conduct with a client. The details were sealed, but the timing coincided with his divorce. Guy's a serial cheater with money problems, Felix explained over coffee at a diner near my shop. And get this, he's been using dating apps the whole time he's been seeing your wife. Dating apps? Multiple profiles on different platforms, all active within the last month. Your wife thinks she's his only side piece, but she's just one of several. That information gave me an idea. If Tessa thought she'd found true love with Nolan, she deserved to know what kind of man she was really dealing with. I created a fake profile on one of the dating apps using photos Felix had pulled from Nolan's social media. Then I started a conversation with him, pretending to be an interested woman named Jennifer. The conversation that followed was enlightening. Nolan was immediately flirtatious, suggesting they meet for drinks that same evening. When Jennifer asked if he was seeing anyone, he claimed to be completely single and looking for something serious. I screenshotted the entire conversation and saved it for later use. But Tessa wasn't sitting idle either. That Friday, I got a call from my insurance company asking about a claim she'd filed against our homeowner's policy. According to the report, I had damaged her personal property during a domestic dispute. What kind of property? I asked the claims adjuster. Electronics, clothing, jewelry. She's claiming about $15,000 in damages. I never touched her stuff. She's provided photos of the damage and a police report number. I hung up and immediately called the police department. Sure enough, Tessa had filed a report claiming I'd destroyed her belongings in a fit of rage after she moved out. The responding officer had taken photos and filed the paperwork without investigating further. It was a clever move. Even if the insurance company ultimately denied the claim, the police report would be part of the public record. Anyone investigating me would find documentation of alleged domestic violence. But Tessa had made one crucial mistake. She'd filed a false police report, which was a crime, and she'd done it using photos of damage that had never actually occurred. I called Felix again. Time to go nuclear, I said. What do you need? Remember that security system you installed at my house last year? The one with cameras in every room? Yeah. Motion activated, cloud storage, the works. Why? Because I've got video proof that Tessa never damaged any property in my house. She filed a false police report. That's a felony. That's leverage. The next phase of my plan required patience and precision. I couldn't just expose Tessa's lies directly. That would look like retaliation. Instead, I needed to let her dig her own grave while I documented every shovel of dirt. The first step was dealing with the insurance claim. I provided the company with video footage from my security system showing Tessa packing her belongings and leaving the house without any drama or property damage. The timestamps on the videos directly contradicted her police report. This is pretty clear-cut, the claims adjuster told me over the phone. We'll be denying the claim and referring the matter to our fraud investigation unit. What does that mean for her? Insurance fraud is a serious crime. If they find evidence of intentional deception, they'll likely refer it to the district attorney's office. Perfect. I didn't have to do anything except tell the truth and let the system work. Meanwhile, Felix had been busy gathering more information about Tessa and Nolan's relationship. What he found was fascinating. Your wife's been funding his lifestyle, Felix explained, showing me bank records he'd obtained through methods I didn't ask about. Cash transfers, credit card payments, even car insurance. She's basically supporting him. How much money are we talking about? About $3,000 a month for the past 2 months. Money that came out of your joint accounts. I stared at the records. Tessa had been using our shared resources to finance her affair. Every romantic dinner, every hotel room, every gift for her boyfriend had been paid for with money I'd earned. There's more, Felix said. Nolan's been bragging about it on social media. Not directly, but he's been posting about expensive restaurants and weekend trips that he definitely can't afford on his salary. Show me. The social media posts told a clear story. Nolan at high-end steakhouses, Nolan at luxury hotels, Nolan wearing expensive watches and clothes, all funded by my wife's generosity. But the most interesting discovery was a private group chat Felix had managed to access. Nolan had been discussing Tessa with his friends, describing her as his sugar mama, and joking about how easy it was to manipulate married women. One message in particular caught my attention. She thinks I'm going to leave my ex for her, but why would I give up free money and great benefits? This setup is perfect. I printed out every message and added them to my growing file of evidence. The next step was more delicate. I needed to expose Tessa's lies without making it obvious that I was behind the exposure. Fortunately, I had an unwitting ally in Mrs. Vexley, our neighbor, who knew everyone's business. I mentioned to Mrs. Vexley that I was concerned about Tessa's well-being since she'd moved out. She seemed so upset when she left, I said, loading concern into my voice. I just hope she's not making decisions she'll regret. Oh, honey, Mrs. Vexley said, her eyes lighting up with the prospect of fresh gossip. I've been worried about her too. Saw her with that fancy man in the expensive car. He doesn't look like the settling down type, if you know what I mean. What do you mean? Well, I was at the grocery store yesterday, and I overheard him on the phone with someone else, talking about meeting up later, and it sure didn't sound like he was talking to Tessa. Mrs. Vexley had unknowingly confirmed what I already knew from the dating app messages. Nolan was seeing multiple women while letting Tessa pay his bills. That's terrible, I said. Someone should probably tell her. Oh, I couldn't interfere in her personal life, Mrs. Vexley said, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She'd find a way to share this information with Tessa, probably within the next 24 hours. Sure enough, Tessa called me that evening, her voice tight with anger. Did you tell Mrs. Vexley to spy on me? I mentioned that I was worried about you. Why? She called me today with some ridiculous story about Nolan seeing other women. She said she was concerned for my welfare. Are you sure it's ridiculous? Of course I'm sure. Nolan and I are exclusive. If you say so. I do say so. And Miles, I know what you're doing. You're trying to sabotage my relationship because you can't handle the fact that I've moved on. Tessa, I genuinely hope you're happy. But if Mrs. Vexley is concerned enough to call you, maybe you should consider why. She's a busybody who thrives on drama. Maybe, or maybe she's trying to save you from making a mistake. Tessa hung up on me, but I knew the seed of doubt had been planted. Combined with the dating app evidence I planned to reveal later, it would be enough to shatter her illusions about Nolan. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Dean called me into his office the next morning with a grim expression. Got another visitor yesterday. This time it was a guy. Let me guess. Silver BMW, expensive suit, perfect hair. That's the one. Said he was concerned about Tessa's safety and wanted to know if you'd ever been violent at work. What did you tell him? Same thing I told the lady. You've been nothing but professional. But Miles, this guy wasn't just fishing for information. He was trying to plant ideas. What kind of ideas? Kept mentioning how domestic abuse often escalates after separation. How men like you, his words, sometimes snap when they lose control of their wives. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Nolan was actively trying to build a case that I was dangerous, probably to justify whatever legal action Tessa was planning. "There's something else," Dean said. "After he left, I did some checking. Guy's got a reputation in the financial district for being a smooth talker who preys on vulnerable women. This isn't his first time breaking up a marriage. How many others?" "At least 3 that I could confirm. Always the same pattern. Targets married women with money, convinces them their husbands are holding them back, helps them file for divorce, then disappears once the settlement money runs out." The picture was becoming clearer. Tessa wasn't just having an affair. She was being systematically manipulated by a professional con artist who specialized in wealthy divorces. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a larger part of me was furious that she'd been so willing to believe the worst about me while falling for Nolan's obvious manipulation. It was time to end this charade once and for all. I spent the weekend planning my final move. Everything had to be perfectly timed and documented. If I was going to destroy Tessa and Nolan's relationship while exposing their schemes, I needed to do it in a way that left no room for doubt or retaliation. The opportunity came on Tuesday evening. Felix had been monitoring Nolan's social media activity and discovered that he was planning a surprise birthday party for one of his friends at an upscale rooftop bar downtown. According to the posts, it was going to be a big event with lots of their social circle attending. "Perfect audience," Felix said when he called with the information. "Half the financial district will be there, plus a bunch of people who know both Nolan and Tessa." "Will Tessa be there?" According to her social media, yes. She posted about buying a new dress for a special event tonight. I spent the afternoon preparing. First, I printed out all the evidence I'd gathered. The dating app conversations, the bank records showing Tessa funding Nolan's lifestyle, the social media posts where he bragged about manipulating her, and the screenshots of him discussing her as his sugar mama. Then I called the insurance fraud investigator and the police detective handling Tessa's false report. Both cases were moving forward, and both investigators were interested in additional evidence of her deceptive behavior. "If you can demonstrate a pattern of dishonesty," the detective told me, "it strengthens the case that her initial report was intentionally false." I think I can do that. At 7 p.m., I drove downtown to the Skyline rooftop bar. The venue was perfect for my purposes. Open layout, lots of witnesses, and multiple exit routes in case things got heated. I arrived early and positioned myself at the bar where I could see the entire space. Felix was already there, nursing a beer and keeping watch. We'd planned this carefully. He would handle any technical aspects while I focused on the confrontation itself. Tessa arrived at 8:15, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before and looking happier than she'd been in months. Nolan met her at the entrance with a kiss that made several people turn and stare. They clearly weren't trying to hide their relationship anymore. I watched them work the room for about an hour, playing the perfect couple for their friends and colleagues. Tessa was animated and charming, introducing Nolan to people as her partner and accepting congratulations on her new relationship. It was sickening, but it was also exactly what I needed. The more public their relationship became, the more public their humiliation would be. At 9:30, I made my move. I walked across the rooftop and approached their group, carrying a manila envelope and wearing my most pleasant expression. "Tessa, hi. Sorry to interrupt." She turned, and I watched her face go through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, embarrassment, anger, and finally a forced smile. "Miles, what are you doing here?" "I needed to give you some documents, divorce papers, insurance forms, that kind of thing. Figured it was easier to find you here than at your apartment." Nolan stepped forward, placing himself slightly between Tessa and me. "I don't think this is the appropriate place for that kind of discussion." "You must be Nolan," I said, extending my hand. "I've heard so much about you." He shook my hand reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Actually," I continued, "I've been wanting to meet you. Tessa's told me how much you care about her well-being." "Of course I care about her." "That's wonderful, Because I care about her too, and I'd hate to see her get hurt by someone who wasn't being honest with her. Tessa's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Instead of answering directly, I pulled out my phone and showed her the dating app conversation I'd had with Nolan just 3 days earlier. The one where he'd claimed to be completely single and looking for something serious. This is you, right? I asked Nolan, showing him his profile picture. His face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because Jennifer here was really looking forward to meeting you for drinks. She was so disappointed when you didn't show up. Tessa grabbed my phone and read the conversation. I watched her expression change as she realized what she was looking at. You were on dating apps? She asked Nolan. It's not what it looks like. I was just what? Just lying to other women the same way you've been lying to me? A crowd was starting to gather around us. This was exactly what I'd hoped for, a public confrontation with plenty of witnesses. Tessa, let's discuss this privately, Nolan said, reaching for her arm. She pulled away from him. No. I want to discuss it right here, right now. Were you seeing other women while we were together? Define seeing, Nolan said, which was possibly the worst answer he could have given. Oh my God, Tessa said. You were cheating on me. The irony was perfect. Tessa, who had cheated on her husband for months, was outraged to discover that her boyfriend was cheating on her, but I wasn't done yet. There's more, I said, pulling out the printed screenshots of Nolan's group chat messages. Your friends might find these interesting. I handed the papers to Tessa, who read them with growing horror. The messages where Nolan called her his sugar mama, where he bragged about manipulating her, where he joked about never having to pay for anything because his desperate housewife covered all his expenses. You called me a desperate housewife? Tessa's voice was rising, attracting even more attention. Tessa, those messages were taken out of context. What context makes it okay to call me desperate? What context makes it okay to brag about using me for money? Nolan looked around at the crowd of people watching the drama unfold, clearly calculating whether he could salvage the situation. Look, we both knew what this was, he said finally. You wanted excitement, I wanted companionship. It was mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial? I left my husband for you. I never asked you to leave your husband. That was your choice. The crowd was eating this up. I could see people recording the argument on their phones, and I knew this would be all over social media within hours. But Tessa wasn't finished. She turned to me with fury in her eyes. You planned this, she said. You orchestrated this whole thing to humiliate me. I didn't make Nolan cheat on you, I replied calmly. I didn't make him call you names behind your back. I didn't make him use you for money. I just made sure you found out about it. You're vindictive and cruel. I'm honest. Something you might want to try sometime. She raised her hand as if to slap me, but Nolan caught her wrist. Don't, he said. There are too many people watching. Let go of me, Tessa snapped. Not until you calm down. I said let go of me. She yanked her arm free with enough force that she stumbled backward, knocking into a table and sending drinks crashing to the floor. The sound of breaking glass brought security guards running. Within minutes, they were escorting all three of us toward the exit while the crowd watched and whispered. Out on the sidewalk, Tessa finally let loose with everything she'd been holding back. You destroyed my life, she screamed. You couldn't stand to see me happy, so you destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just showed you the truth about the man you left me for. The truth? You want to talk about truth? The truth is, you're a small, petty man who can't handle the fact that his wife outgrew him. The truth is you're a cheater and a liar who filed false police reports and committed insurance fraud because you couldn't face the consequences of your choices. That stopped her cold. What are you talking about? The insurance claim for property damage that never happened. The police report about domestic violence that was completely fabricated. Did you really think I wouldn't have security camera footage of everything that happened in my house? Nolan, who had been trying to fade into the background, suddenly looked very interested in the conversation. You filed false reports? He asked Tessa. I had to protect myself, she said defensively. From what? He never touched you. He could have. Men like him always escalate when they lose control. Men like him? I repeated. You mean men who work honest jobs and support their wives and don't cheat or lie or steal? You know what I mean. Actually, I don't. Why don't you explain it to everyone here? By now, several people from the bar had followed us outside, drawn by the continuing drama. Tessa looked around at all the faces watching her and seemed to realize how badly this was going. I want to go home, she said to Nolan. Which home? He asked. Because you can't go back to his house, and you can't afford that apartment without his money. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not paying your rent, Tessa. I never agreed to support you. But you said, I said a lot of things, doesn't mean I meant them. And there it was, the final betrayal that completed Tessa's humiliation. Not only had Nolan been cheating on her and mocking her to his friends, but he was also abandoning her now that the money train had stopped. Tessa looked back and forth between us, and I could see the moment when she realized how completely she'd been played. By Nolan, certainly, but also by her own arrogance and selfishness. This isn't over, she said to me. Yes, it is, I replied. The divorce papers are in that envelope. Sign them, return them to my lawyer, and we never have to see each other again. And if I don't? Then you'll be dealing with insurance fraud charges and filing false police reports while representing yourself in divorce court. Your choice. I walked away, leaving Tessa and Nolan to figure out their own mess. Behind me, I could hear them starting to argue again, their voices fading as I reached my truck. Felix caught up with me in the parking lot. That went better than expected, he said. Think it's really over? After tonight? Yeah. She's got no money, no credibility, and no boyfriend. Plus, half the financial district just watched her have a public meltdown. Her reputation is finished. I started the truck and sat there for a moment, engine idling in the cool night air. 3 months ago, I'd thought my marriage was worth saving. Tonight, I'd watched it end in a rooftop bar surrounded by strangers with cameras. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like the end of something that had been broken for a long time. But as I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, I realized something important. I felt free. For the first time in months, I wasn't wondering what Tessa was really doing or who she was really with. I wasn't waiting for the next lie or the next betrayal. The house on Elmwood Drive was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. Mrs. Vexley's porch light was on, and I could see her silhouette in the window. By tomorrow morning, the entire neighborhood would know what had happened tonight. By the end of the week, it would be common knowledge that Tessa Harren had destroyed her marriage for a man who'd been using her for money and cheating on her with multiple women. I parked the truck and walked to my front door, fishing for my keys in the darkness. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work at the shop, back to fixing engines and solving problems that had clear solutions. Tonight, I'd sleep in my own bed in my own house, with no lies and no secrets. Tessa had wanted freedom. Now she had it. Freedom from marriage, from financial security, from the respect of her peers, and from any illusions about the kind of man she'd chosen over her husband. As for me, I had something better than freedom. I had the truth, and I had my self-respect. It was enough.